Hello, fellow planters. So this week, Hobby Lobby has a sale on a lot of their floral stuff. So I bought a bunch of different styles of wall-mounted planters. And what's nice is the label peels off easily on these, which is great. But one thing it does say is not intended for use with water. So the question is, can I still plant things in here? The answer is yes. So they didn't design these to plant things, they designed them to put like fake flowers. Who wants that? You want real plants, good manly plants, not these foo-foo fake stuff just to look pretty and not really have a purpose, like freshening the air in the house or something. You know how some plants are like help purify the air. Anyway, they are glazed and everything, so they should be fine. They're not designed for that, not intended for. It doesn't mean you can't plant something in them. So these came in both black and white, but I only bought a black one because the white ones were all scuffed, where they rub against things or against the metal in the racks, and so they already looked worn out. I just noticed a moment ago how there are a couple like dimples in here. I can't tell if it shows up on the camera or not from workmanship, so it's not perfectly smooth right there, a little manufacturing flaw, but that's fine. Now I have different rings to use. I have some of the D rings, and instead of buying just round rings, I'm using some key rings. And I actually found some 2-inch round stainless steel. In a previous video I complained about how Michaels only has the antique bronze look, but they are thicker. These were thin, and you want the thicker ones typically, and you can see where this welding is or the seam, which I guess I'll be stuck having to go back and get some more of those antique bronze ones, or maybe I can find something that's thicker and stainless steel in the Leathercraft Hobby Lobby. I'll have to remember next time I go there to check. So anyway, I'm using this type of cordage, which is synthetic, but it's really white. And it may not be the nicest looking with this, but it could, it depends on the look you want. Now, if I do tie them, you see with a D-ring, there's going to be a little extra width and everything. So for the hanger, because I'm not going to have a bunch of these in a row, I'm going to actually start using a key ring as the hanger, but I'm going to be using a really long piece. So to start, I didn't really measure the length, I just took an approximation of what I'll need. And I'm going to go down the length to find the center. Now I'm going to put a key ring in here because I'm going to have a key ring go on the back as well as this, if all works out as intended. So I'm going to stick the central loop through here, leave the key ring in the back, and then loop this through. So in essence, if you can see, oops, I turned. In essence, I have a loop going through like that, and then I can tighten, and now I have it pretty on the front and a key ring in there. And score, I got these about the same length. Next, I'm going to use another key ring for the hanger. So while I have this looped, I'm going to run this. I want it probably about that long. Make sure I don't drop this. I guess I want it about there, yeah. So now I'm going to actually basically run square knots down. So rather than do a loop at the top, I'm going to try that. It's tricky having this hanging on there to do it while in front of the camera, but it will work. So the question is that too high? Maybe I need it a little higher. So I'm going to actually loosen this and get that higher. There we go, that's a half square. Now I can do the other side. Now I measured how much I need to here from here to here, and then about that much multiplied by 2 to cover both sides, just to get an approximate of length I need. You know, when you're doing macrame and you don't know, like you're doing something new you've never done before, you need to approximate the cordage. You don't want to make it too short, but you don't want way too long to end up having a lot go to waste. So it's just the, you know, the joys of working on new versions or prototypes. So let me go ahead and continue this all the way down to here. And then we'll continue from there. So I went ahead and ran the square knots all the way to the bottom. And as you can see, it could have been a little longer. So what I may have to do is shorten the height a little bit so that I can get extra slack. When you're looping the outer loops, keep in mind that that means you probably need 3 times the length for the upper portion than you typically would. So I approximated 2, but I should have had 3. So to remedy this without wasting string is I'm going to loosen all this and then loop this to where it's a little shorter. And plus that looks a little too long. It might be okay actually, but you know, I kind of like it. So maybe I could do something interesting in the back as a workaround. So let us see, we have this ring. I may want to actually do one final square knot just so there's no like funky appearing there, or maybe at least a half square. So let's see, yeah, I could try a square, a full square. Okay. Yeah, that actually does look better. And this is actually shorter now, lovely. So, you know, one thing about this synthetic string is it is a pain to loosen. So if you make a mistake or you want to loosen all this, and it's just a pain anyway. So now what I need to do is rig up some way to mount a few and make like a netting around there. So I can always put a ring here and run this. You know, I probably didn't even need that. Fortunately, I did use a key ring. So I'm going to tie this, figure out the height I want. Yeah, there's good. Tie this and do the same with the other side. You see this? I actually can make use of that keyring. Don't you just love watching videos where people are trying to figure things out versus having already figured them out and addressed them with the viewer? So anyway, I'm actually going to run this through the keyring. And the reason being is that keeps the loops tucked behind. So I'm going to actually loop this to the inside and loop that to the inside. And without knocking the hanger over, I'm going to pull on it. Okay, there we go. that's, yeah, actually that's a good height. So it's always tricky when you have two that you need to maintain the right same amount of tension to. That doesn't look too bad. Okay. So that's what I'm going to start with. Now I have this string that I can see how I'm going to loop it around. That is just too plain and simple, isn't it? So it does give me an idea, though, to come up with something really interesting. Huh. Actually, I like the simplicity of that. I was going to do like a webbing type thing, but I do like the simplicity of this. So the question is, you know, I can actually use this and then I'll get more string for the other things. If I can get this loose. Doesn't help that I pruned my nails a little today. I guess preening is what birds do. Okay, so I got that loose, and I'm gonna run the string through one side, loop it around to the other side, see if I can get it looped really tight. So I'm looping it again in the ring. And let's look, that's a little slack. So get it as tight as I can and centered as I can. Okay. There we go. Now I can tie these two together. I'll do 3 this time just to make sure it's nice and tight. So now the front side looks like that, which by itself is actually decorative, isn't it? So anyway, now let me get some string and work my magic even more. So I approximated length and I cut 3 pieces. I kind of like the simplicity of this, but I do want to, you know, make it look a little more intricate as opposed to simple. Now I went ahead and took these off, and you know, initially I looped them from the inside. I thought if I looped them from the outside it would be better, because now this will be a padding against a wall versus the metal, so it doesn't scratch the wall. And this, the way I looped it, you see that? I need to flip the knot over so this is more flat against the ceramic. So I did 3 ties, so now I have 3 to untie. Yes, the joys of untying knots in synthetic fabric when you don't have fingernails. Okay, so now I have to loop this over and under versus the way I did that. Once I get the other knot taken care of. Come on, come on, come on, you got it. There we go, yay. Okay, so I'm gonna have to loop this over and under. And that one again, you know, over and under. Oops. There. So now I can hang this and see. Pull it as much as I can and tie the knots. Too bad this knot and not the marriage knot. Anyway. So I'm gonna make sure this will fold in there like that so it's out of the way. And now we can flip it back to the front. Guess I could always just turn the hook. But anyway, so now I have this kind of thing-a-jig. And what I'm going to do is a loop-de-loop where I run the loop. I'm going to start with the center because I'm going to do 3 bands coming down. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is like that. And you see that's on the outside. I had this where the center went out, so this is going to be like that, essentially. Now I have 8. So I did this wrong. What I'm going to do is loop this from the back center of that. Turn. Come this way and run those through. Assuming I can. That kind of looks nice right like that, doesn't it? But let's see. We get that in. Oopsie. And we get the other one in. Okay, there we go. So now I want this in the center, like that. It's going to be fun running square knots through that when this is attached and hanging. Anyway, it will be a pain, but doable. Yeah, I can always push this down to give slack and then it's pulled back up, you know? So anyway. Make sure these are lined up still. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and run square knots down the center and then we'll take a look at how it looks. Turns out I didn't cut this long enough to go all the way down and underneath, and it would be tricky running a couple more square knot ropes down the side. So I'm just going to go with this. I may even have to unloosen it one strand, but I'm going to try it with this for now. So what I need to do is these extra loops, I'm going to run them from the outside of the ring, just so I can make sure this doesn't sag. So I'm running it on both sides. So let me run it from under and then over. So, you know, this way I'm just eliminating any sagginess, and I can go ahead and just tie this if need be. So hopefully, yeah, you see that's so much better. Now, this on each side, if you notice, I don't have enough, well, yeah, you see how this slides? That's tricky. I need a little more rope on this side, and then I'm going to have to tie it on both sides so it doesn't slide, and it will look like that. So, let me get that there. So I do need to at least loosen one grouping of square knot. Let me see if that's, well, actually it's I just, you know, that lower one will be a half. That's fine. a half square. So now I have all these in the way, so I need to tuck them out of the way. So let me just stick them under there for now. And run this from over. You know what? I do need an extra length on that one. I could always lower this to give me a little extra length, but I kind of like it at that level. Oh yeah, but now I have plenty on this side and a little more on that side. So I'm just going to loop them through just to see where they're at. And what I'll do is actually just, whoops, I'm going to actually just tie this in the center versus having two knots, and hopefully that will be okay. So now this is what we have. I can make sure this is centered, put that way. You know, I could even have it this way if I want to. Actually, that doesn't look too bad, does it? And let me just center it. So anyway, now we have it looking like this, nice and fancy. So now we just need to clean up the backside and we're set. So the question is, do I snip these or do I keep them long and tuck them away? I'm just doing a couple extra knots just to be safe, but I'm just going to snip them so they are out of the way. These, for the lower one, I could just tuck under there, that's fine. But for this, it's just in the way, you know, in there. So I'm just going to do snip, snip, and snip. Now, this has fray, oh, that's the extra on the top part, so I'll snip that as well. Okay. So here we have the if I want to, I could always add a dab of super glue here and here just to keep that in place. And then you can always add the nail there if you want that flat as well. But here we have the finished product. I hope you enjoyed this build. Thanks for watching and happy planting.